Welcome to our channel, Crime Loom, the place where true crime stories come alive. On a quiet street where life looked perfect, everyone trusted the man who lived next door. He was kind, helpful, and always smiling, the kind of neighbor everyone wished for. But behind his friendly face, a dark secret was waiting. This is the story of how one community discovered that the perfect neighbor was not who he seemed. Ethan Brooks lived on a quiet street where every house looked almost the same. The lawns were green, the fences were white, and people waved when they saw each other. To many, it was the kind of street where nothing bad could ever happen. Everyone felt safe there. The children rode their bikes after school, the parents watered their flowers, and neighbors shared food during summer cookouts. Among all the families, Ethan stood out. He was in his mid-30s, tall and well-mannered, always dressed neatly, and his smile never seemed to fade. If someone's car broke down, Ethan would step in to help. If a neighbor needed to carry heavy bags, Ethan was there to lend a hand. People often said he was the kind of person you would want living next door. Across the street, Claire Morgan lived with her teenage son, Adam. Claire worked as a nurse at the local clinic, which kept her busy, but she always made time for her boy. Life had not been easy for her since her divorce, yet she managed with strength and patience. Adam, 16 years old, was quiet and thoughtful. He often noticed small things that others ignored. He respected Ethan because everyone did, but sometimes he felt uneasy around him. He could not explain why. Claire liked Ethan, too. She often saw him mowing his lawn, trimming his bushes, or greeting the mailman with cheer. Once, when her car refused to start, Ethan had come over with his tools and fixed it in minutes. She had been grateful. "You really are a lifesaver," she told him that day. Ethan had laughed and said, "Just glad to help, Claire. Neighbors, look out for each other." Life continued smoothly on the street. Summer came and children played late into the evening. The sound of sprinklers and laughter filled the air. On weekends, the neighbors gathered for barbecues, where Ethan always brought extra food and drinks. He had a way of making people feel comfortable. Even the older residents, like Mrs. Harper at the end of the street, adored him. She often said that Ethan is such a good man. I wish every neighbor was like him. But Adam sometimes saw a different side. One night, while returning from a friend's house, he noticed Ethan standing alone outside, near the fence that separated their yards. It was late, and the street was quiet. Ethan stood very still, staring at Claire's house as if deep in thought. Adam froze for a moment, watching him. When Ethan realized Adam was there, he quickly smiled and waved. "Out late, Adam?" he asked kindly. Adam nodded and hurried inside, his heart racing. The next morning, Adam told his mother what he had seen. Claire laughed softly. "Maybe he was just checking something in his yard. You know how helpful he is. Don't worry too much." Adam tried to let it go, but a part of him stayed uneasy. One Saturday afternoon, Claire visited Ethan's house to return a dish he had lent her. He invited her inside for a glass of iced tea. His home looked tidy and well kept. Family photos hung on the walls, though Claire noticed they were mostly of landscapes and himself, not with relatives or friends. As she walked through the hallway, her eyes fell on a door at the far end, locked with a heavy padlock. She raised an eyebrow. "What's in there?" she asked casually. Ethan's smile tightened. "Just storage," he replied quickly. Then he changed the subject, guiding her back to the living room. Claire tried not to think about it, but something about that locked door bothered her. Why would a storage room need such a strong lock? She told herself not to be suspicious. After all, Ethan was kind, and everyone trusted him. Later that evening, another small thing caught her attention. She saw Ethan carrying a box into his house at night. He looked around before going inside, as though checking if anyone was watching. She almost asked about it the next day, but decided not to. It felt rude to question a man who had done nothing. but good for everyone. Despite these odd moments, Ethan's charm never faded in the eyes of the neighborhood. At a block party, he grilled burgers, made jokes, and even entertained the children with magic tricks. People clapped and cheered for him. Claire smiled too, though a quiet unease stirred in her heart. One evening, Adam returned home shaken. He told Claire that he had heard strange noises near Ethan's shed. "It sounded like crying," he whispered. Claire frowned. "Adam, maybe it was an animal. Don't scare yourself." But Adam insisted, "It didn't sound like an animal. Mom." Claire promised to keep an eye out, but she did not want to jump to conclusions. She had always believed Ethan to be good. Yet, when she looked out of her window later that night, she saw Ethan again, standing alone in the dark, watching. His face was calm, his hands in his pockets, but his eyes seemed distant, almost cold. When he noticed her at the window, he lifted his hand in a slow wave. Claire quickly stepped back, her stomach twisting with unease. The street still looked peaceful from the outside. Cars came and went, kids played, and neighbors laughed together. But in Claire's mind, a shadow had begun to grow. She could not ignore the locked basement door, the late-night stares, or the strange noises Adam had described. Still, she said nothing. After all, Ethan Brooks was the perfect neighbor. The next few weeks passed quietly on the street. People went about their routines and life looked normal, but small things began to disturb the peace. One morning, Mrs. Harper could not find her dog. She searched the whole yard, called the dogs, name again and again, but there was no answer. She walked from house to house, asking if anyone had seen it. Everyone said no. Ethan joined the search, walking with her around the block, comforting her and promising to keep an eye out. His kindness calmed her, though the dog never returned. Soon after, another small thing happened. Mr. Jennings, who lived 3 houses down, found his shed broken into. A few tools were missing, but nothing else. He complained about kids playing pranks, but nobody knew for sure who was responsible. At the next neighborhood meeting, people talked about the missing dog and the shed. Ethan listened quietly, nodding and agreeing that times were changing and they should all be careful. His calm voice made people feel safe again. Claire listened, too, but she could not shake her unease. Every time Ethan spoke, his tone was gentle, but she remembered the locked basement door, the late-night staring, and Adam's story about the noises. Still, she kept silent, not wanting to sound suspicious. She reminded herself that Ethan had helped her many times, and everyone loved him. Maybe she was overthinking. Adam, however, grew more restless. One night, while returning home from basketball practice, he saw Ethan standing at his driveway staring at the road. Ethan smiled and said, "Long day, Adam?" The boy nodded, but he felt a chill. Something about Ethan's smile seemed different at night, less warm, more forced. When Adam got home, he told his mother, "I don't trust him." Claire sighed and tried to reassure him. "Ethan has always been good to us. Don't let your imagination run wild." But doubts began to creep into her own mind. She remembered how Ethan had quickly changed the subject when she asked about the locked door. She remembered the box he carried inside at night. She wanted to ignore it, but she could not. A week later, the neighborhood gathered at the park for a small summer event. There was food, games, and music. Everyone laughed and enjoyed themselves. Ethan was the life of the party, cooking hot dogs and telling stories. He even helped a little boy who had scraped his knee. Parents watched him with admiration. Claire tried to relax and join in, but her eyes kept returning to him. Every smile, every laugh, it all looked perfect. Too perfect. As the sun set, Ethan approached Claire and Adam. "How are you both doing?" he asked. His voice was smooth and polite. Claire forced a smile. "We're good, thank you." Ethan looked at Adam for a moment longer than usual. His gaze lingered, and Adam shifted uncomfortably. Claire noticed and stepped slightly in front of her son. Ethan's smile never faded. "You two should come over for dinner sometime," he said. "I make a great roast chicken." Claire nodded quickly but gave no answer. That night, Claire lay awake in bed. The street was silent, yet she could not stop thinking. She thought about the missing dog, the shed, the locked basement door, and Ethan's lingering gaze at her son. She wanted to believe she was imagining things, but deep inside, she felt something was not right. 2 days later, another strange thing happened. Adam came home shaken. "Mom," he whispered, "I saw him again. He was standing by the fence, just staring. He didn't say anything this time." Claire frowned. "When?" "Just now," Adam said, "when I walked past his house. He was standing in the dark, watching me." Claire felt a shiver down her spine. She wanted to confront Ethan, but she was afraid of causing trouble. What if she was wrong? What if she was just being unfair? Everyone respected him. Everyone believed he was good. That weekend, she decided to test her feelings. She baked a pie and took it over to Ethan's house as a friendly gesture. He welcomed her with open arms, smiling as always. His house looked clean and neat, everything in order. They sat in the living room drinking coffee. Claire tried to keep her tone casual when she said, "You always seem so busy around here. Do you live alone?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, it's just me. Quiet life suits me." Her eyes wandered again toward the hallway where the locked basement door was. "You keep that room locked, don't you?" she asked softly. Ethan's smile stiffened for a second before returning. "Yes, it's just storage. Old things. Nothing worth looking at." His voice was calm, but Claire felt a warning in it, as if she should not ask again. She nodded politely and changed the subject. After a few minutes, she excused herself and left. As she walked back home, her heart pounded. Something was wrong. She could feel it. That night, she told Adam, "I think we need to be careful." He looked at her with wide eyes. "You believe me now?" She nodded slowly. "I'm starting to." From that moment on, Claire watched Ethan more closely. She noticed how often he came home late at night, carrying bags or boxes. She noticed how he avoided letting anyone too close to his basement. She noticed how his smile never reached his eyes when he thought no one was looking. The street still looked peaceful, but for Claire and Adam, the calm surface no longer felt real. They lived across from a man everyone called the Perfect Neighbor. But the mask was starting to slip, and the truth, whatever it was, waited in the shadows. Claire tried to live normally, but her mind was restless. The image of Ethan's locked door kept returning to her thoughts. She wondered what could be behind it. Boxes, old furniture, or something she did not want to imagine. Every time she looked out her window and saw him mowing the lawn or waving at passing cars, she felt torn. On one side, he looked harmless, even friendly. On the other side, she remembered his cold eyes at night and his strange behavior. Adam grew more anxious as days passed. He avoided walking alone after dark and often asked Claire to pick him up from practice. One evening, when Claire was busy at the clinic, Adam walked home by himself. The sun was setting and the street was quiet. As he neared his house, he saw Ethan again. Ethan was standing by his fence, still as a statue, watching. Adam froze. For a moment, no words were spoken. Then Ethan smiled slowly and said, "Evening, Adam." His voice was calm, but Adam felt his heart pound. He muttered a quick hello and rushed inside his house, locking the door behind him. When Claire returned, Adam told her what happened. Claire's face grew pale. She hugged him and whispered, "I don't like this." They agreed to stay cautious, though neither of them knew what to do. The next morning, Claire was watering her flowers when Ethan walked over with his usual friendly smile. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" he said. Claire forced a smile. "Yes, it is." He glanced at her house for a moment before asking, "How's Adam? Haven't seen him much lately." Claire's stomach tightened. "He's fine," she answered quickly. Ethan nodded, his smile still fixed, but his eyes seemed to linger on her longer than normal. That evening, Claire decided to talk to her friend and neighbor, Lucas Price. Lucas lived down the street with his younger sister, Lily. Claire trusted him. Over coffee, she told him about her worries. She described Ethan's strange behavior, the locked basement, and Adam's unease. Lucas listened carefully. "I don't know," he said slowly. "Ethan has always been good to us, but..." Lily mentioned something odd the other day. She said she saw him near the school, just watching. She thought it was strange. Claire felt a chill. "Do you think something's wrong with him?" Lucas hesitated. "I don't want to believe it, but maybe we should keep an eye out." The following week, the neighborhood was shaken. Lily Price, Lucas's younger sister, did not come home from school one afternoon. The family panicked. Lucas searched everywhere, calling her friends, checking the park, and knocking on doors. Claire joined the search while Adam stayed close by her side. Soon, police cars arrived, and officers began asking questions. The neighborhood gathered in small groups, whispering, in fear. "A missing child? Here?" someone said. "This place has always been safe." Another neighbor shook his head. "It must be someone from outside. It can't be anyone here." The police went door to door, questioning each family. When they reached Ethan's house, he welcomed them with open arms. "Of course, officers," he said kindly. "Come in. Search wherever you like." His calmness impressed the neighbors. He even offered the officers coffee while they looked around. They found nothing unusual. The house looked normal, tidy, and safe. The locked basement door was noticed, but when asked, Ethan explained it was just storage. The officers accepted his answer and left. Claire watched from her window as the police walked away. Ethan stood at his doorway, smiling politely, but when he thought no one was watching, his smile dropped. His face became blank, almost cold. Claire's breath caught in her throat. She quickly stepped back, her heart racing. That night, Adam couldn't sleep. He sat by his window staring across the street. Around midnight, he saw a faint light flicker from Ethan's basement window. He leaned closer, his eyes wide. Then he froze. He thought he saw movement, like a shadow inside. His stomach turned. He ran to his mother's room and whispered urgently, "Mom, there's light in his basement. I saw something moving." Claire hurried to the window. The light had gone out, but she believed her son. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "We can't keep quiet anymore," she whispered. "Something is wrong. I feel it." The next day, she tried to speak with the police, again telling them about the noises Adam had heard and the light in the basement. But the officers said they had already checked Ethan's house and found nothing. "We understand your worry, ma'am," one officer said, "but sometimes fear makes us imagine things. We're doing everything we can to find Lily." Claire walked home frustrated and scared. Adam looked at her with worried eyes. "They don't believe us, do they?" he asked. Claire shook her head. "Not yet, but we can't give up." Days passed, and the neighborhood grew more tense. Posters of Lily's face were taped on lampposts. Families locked their doors earlier. Children were no longer allowed to play outside. Fear settled over the once happy street. And through it all, Ethan remained calm and helpful, offering comfort to others, lending a hand where he could. To most, he was still the perfect neighbor, but not to Claire. Every smile of his felt like a mask. Every wave seemed hollow, She knew deep down that something dark was hidden behind his polite face. She remembered the locked basement door, the cold eyes, the late-night stares, and Adam's fear. The pieces were coming together, though the picture was still unclear. One evening, Claire sat on her porch, watching the sunset. Ethan walked over and stood at the edge of her yard. "You look worried, Claire," he said softly. "Is everything all right?" Claire forced a smile. "Just tired?" she replied. Ethan's eyes lingered on her, then shifted to Adam, who was sitting inside by the window. His smile grew. "You have to be careful these days," he said. "Strange things are happening." Claire's heart pounded. She nodded quickly and excused herself. As she closed the door, she whispered to herself, "He knows. He knows we're watching him." The street still looked the same on the outside, peaceful, quiet, and ordinary. But beneath the calm surface, fear was spreading. A girl was missing. The police had no answers, and suspicion was growing in Claire's mind. The perfect neighbor was no longer perfect. He was something else, something she could not yet name but knew she had to uncover. The days after Lily's disappearance dragged on like heavy clouds over the neighborhood. Parents no longer let their children walk to school alone. Neighbors double-checked their locks and glanced over their shoulders at night. The once friendly street was now filled with fear and whispers. Claire felt the tension everywhere she went, and Adam rarely left the house. Lucas was devastated. He searched every corner of town, handing out flyers with Lily's photo, begging for answers. Claire supported him as best as she could, but she knew something Lucas did not. She knew who she suspected, but she could not bring herself to tell him directly. What if she was wrong? What if accusing Ethan without proof destroyed their friendship and brought shame on her? One evening, Claire sat at her kitchen table with Adam. "We need to be careful," she whispered. "Don't talk to Ethan. Don't go near his house. Promise me." Adam nodded quickly. "I promise. I don't even want to look at him." But Ethan made it difficult to avoid him. The very next day, he came over with a basket of muffins, smiling, as though nothing bad was happening. "I thought you and Adam might enjoy these," he said warmly. Claire accepted them politely, but did not eat them. She placed the basket on the counter, untouched. Adam stared at Ethan from behind his mother, his eyes full of suspicion. That night, Claire noticed movement again from Ethan's house. She was washing dishes when she saw him carrying another box through his back door. It was heavy. She could tell from the way he struggled with it. He glanced around, making sure no one was watching, but Claire ducked quickly behind the curtain before he saw her. Her heart thudded. She knew she was not imagining things anymore. The following morning, the police returned to the neighborhood. They questioned people again, asking for any new information. Claire wanted to tell them everything, the noises, the light, the boxes, but fear held her back. The officers seemed tired and overworked. What if they dismissed her again? She could not risk being ignored twice. Lucas walked up to her later, his face pale and tired. "The police don't know anything," he muttered. "It's like Lily just vanished. How is that possible?" Claire hesitated, wanting to speak, but she swallowed her words. She put a hand on his arm. "We'll find her," she said softly, though her heart was heavy with doubt. That night, Adam woke to a faint sound outside. He pressed his ear to the window and heard it again, muffled cries. His chest tightened. He shook his mother awake. "Mom, it's happening again," he whispered. Urgently, "I swear I heard someone crying near his house." Claire's fear deepened. She wanted to call the police right then, but she knew they would not come without proof. She held Adam close and whispered, "We'll figure this out." The next day, she made a decision. She would watch Ethan closely no matter what. She began noting the times he left his house, when lights turned on, when noises came. She wrote everything down in a small notebook, determined to find a pattern. Ethan continued his daily routine of smiling at neighbors, offering help, and keeping his image clean. But Claire could see through it now. His perfection looked too rehearsed, like a mask he wore. 2 nights later, the sound came again. This time Claire heard it too. A faint, desperate cry carried through the still night. Air! She and Adam froze in silence, listening. It came from the direction of Ethan's basement. Claire's hands trembled. She whispered, "It's real. Someone is in there." Her fear turned into resolve. She decided she could not stay silent anymore. The next morning, she called the police again, her voice firm. "You have to check his basement," she insisted. "There's something there. I heard it myself." The officers promised to investigate, but when they returned to Ethan's home, the search was once again smooth and polite. Ethan welcomed them, led them through his house, and unlocked his basement door. Claire and Adam watched from across the street, their hearts pounding. The officers went inside, stayed for a few minutes, and then came out, shaking their heads. "Nothing unusual," they told Claire. "We checked. Just old boxes and tools." Claire felt her stomach drop. How could it be possible? Had Ethan hidden everything before they arrived? She looked across the street at him. Ethan stood in his doorway, smiling faintly, his eyes locked on hers. In that moment, she knew. He was playing a game with them, and he knew she was the only one suspicious enough to see through his mask. That evening, Lucas came to her house again, desperate for hope. Claire wanted to tell him, but she was afraid he would think she had lost her mind. Instead, she said, "Lucas, stay strong. We'll find Lily." Her words felt empty. The neighborhood remained tense. Parents kept their children close. Police cars passed often but found no answers. And Ethan kept smiling, walking his lawn with a rake in hand, waving to everyone as if nothing was wrong. Inside her home, Claire whispered to Adam, "We have to be the ones to prove it. The police won't help us. We'll watch him. We'll find something they can't ignore." Adam's eyes were wide with both fear and courage. "Okay, Mom," he said. "We'll do it together." From then on, their nights were filled with quiet watches at the window, notebooks full of times and details, and hearts pounding with dread. They were no longer just neighbors. They had become silent investigators, waiting for the mask of the perfect neighbor to finally break. The following week felt heavier than any before. Rain clouds covered the street, and the air carried a quiet gloom. Claire and Adam stayed alert every evening, watching from their window, waiting for any sign that could confirm their fears. One night, Adam shook his mother awake again. "Mom, it's happening," he whispered. Claire rubbed her eyes and followed him to the window. Across the street, faint light glowed from Ethan's basement window. This time, the sound was clearer. A muffled cry echoed through the silence, followed by a soft thud. Claire's stomach turned cold. She whispered, "It's real. Someone is there." Adam's face was pale. "We have to do something." The next morning, Claire called the police again, her voice steady but desperate. She told them about the cries, the light, and her suspicion. This time her words carried weight. Perhaps the officers had grown desperate themselves, or perhaps they sensed her conviction. They agreed to search again, more carefully. That evening, as rain began to fall, police cars pulled up in front of Ethan's house. Red and blue lights flashed across the quiet street, waking the neighbors. Curtains moved as families peeked out to see what was happening. Claire and Adam stood at their own window, holding their breath. Ethan opened the door with his usual calm smile. "Officers," he said warmly. "Of course, come in." But this search was different. The officers were firm, checking each room with care. When they reached the basement, Ethan's smile faltered for the first time. He hesitated at the locked door. Claire could see it from across the street, the small pause, the flicker of unease in his face. Then he unlocked it with shaking hands. The officers entered. A minute passed, then another, and then came a shout. "We found something!" Claire's heart raced. Neighbors gasped. More officers rushed inside. Minutes later, they led a trembling girl out of the basement, Lily Price. Her face was pale, her clothes dirty, and her eyes wide with fear. She clung to one of the officers, sobbing. Lucas, who had arrived with the crowd, cried out her name and ran forward, hugging his sister tightly. Relief and shock swept through the neighborhood. Behind them, the officers carried out boxes filled with disturbing evidence, personal belongings of other missing people, photographs, and journals. The truth spilled out all at once, crushing the image of the perfect neighbor. Ethan was brought outside in handcuffs. His smile had vanished. His face was calm but empty, his eyes cold. Neighbors stared in disbelief, some crying, others whispering. "It can't be him," one woman said. "Not Ethan, he was so kind." Another shook her head. "We never really knew him at all." Claire stood frozen, holding Adam's hand tightly. Relief washed over her knowing Lily was alive, but dread filled her as she realized how close the danger had been. Right across the street, behind a friendly smile, evil had been hiding all along. As the police car doors shut on Ethan, he turned his head slightly, his eyes finding Claire's window. For a brief moment, his lips curled into a faint, chilling smile. Claire stepped back, her body trembling. Adam whispered, "He knows it was us." The neighborhood buzzed with shock as the news spread. Reporters arrived the next day, their cameras flashing, asking questions. People who once praised Ethan now admitted they had ignored the little things, the quiet stares, the odd hours, the locked basement. Everyone felt betrayed. Claire spoke with Lucas, who thanked her again and again. "If you hadn't kept pushing, Lily might still be there," he said, his voice breaking. Claire shook her head. "I only wish I had acted sooner." That night, the street was quiet again, but it was no longer the same. The peace was broken. Families who once trusted each other now lived with suspicion. Every sound in the dark carried weight. Every locked door seemed like a warning. Adam asked softly, "Mom, do you think there are others? People he hurt before?" Claire hugged him tightly. "Maybe," she whispered. "But what matters is that Lily is safe now, and he can't hurt anyone else." Still in the silence of her room, she could not forget the look Ethan gave her as he was taken away. A look that said he knew who had exposed him. A look that carried a promise, silent but sharp, that she would never forget. The perfect neighbor was gone. In his place stood the truth, a predator who had fooled an entire street. And though justice had taken him away, his shadow lingered, reminding them all that darkness can hide behind even the brightest smiles. The night Ethan was taken away, the whole street stayed awake. Neighbors whispered on porches, parents held their children closer, and Lucas refused to leave his sister's side. Claire sat with Adam by the window, watching the police cars leave, one by one. The image of Ethan in handcuffs stayed in her mind. His calm face, his cold eyes, and that small smile he gave her before stepping into the car. It haunted her. The next morning, the neighborhood was filled with reporters. News vans lined the street. Microphones pointed at neighbors who had once praised Ethan. Cameras captured every detail, the white fences, the quiet homes, and the shocking story of the man who lived among them. People said words like unbelievable and impossible. They shook their heads, still struggling to accept that the kind man who fixed cars and baked cookies for block parties was the same man who had kept a girl locked in his basement. Claire tried to avoid the reporters. She did not want attention. She wanted to protect Adam, who was already shaken. But one reporter noticed her and asked, "Ma'am, did you suspect anything? Did you ever see signs?" Claire's lips parted, but no words came out. Finally, she whispered, "We all saw things. We just didn't want to believe them." Then she walked away, holding Adam's hand tightly. Lucas came by that afternoon. His eyes were red from crying, but there was relief in his voice. "She's safe," he said, hugging Claire. "Lily is safe because of you." Claire shook her head. "I only spoke up. It shouldn't have taken this long. I should have done more." Lucas gripped her shoulders. "You did enough. You saw what others didn't. You gave them no choice but to act." Adam stood quietly nearby, listening. He still looked pale, his eyes full of worry. When Lucas left, he turned to his mother and whispered, "What if he comes back?" Claire knelt down and hugged him. "He won't, Adam. He's in jail now. He can't hurt us anymore." But even as she said it, the memory of Ethan's smile made her question her own words. Over the next few days, the police released more details. They found journals in Ethan's basement filled with dark thoughts and plans. They uncovered belongings from other missing people, though some cases remained unsolved. The more that was revealed, the more the neighborhood realized how close they had lived to danger. Families who once left their doors unlocked now installed new locks and cameras. Parents who once trusted their children to walk home from school now drove them everywhere. The friendly gatherings and cookouts stopped. No one laughed on the street anymore. The perfect image of their community was gone, replaced by suspicion and fear. Claire struggled too. She could not sleep without checking the locks 3 times. Every creak in the night made her tense. Sometimes she dreamed of Ethan standing outside her window, smiling. She would wake in a sweat, holding Adam's hand tightly as if to protect him even in sleep. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Adam sat beside her on the porch. "Do you think people will ever forget?" he asked softly. Claire looked at him, her eyes heavy. "Maybe they'll move on, but forget? I don't think so. Not when it happened right here." Adam nodded slowly, staring at the empty house. Across the street, police tape still covered the doors and the windows were dark. The house looked hollow, as if it held the memories of every terrible thing that happened inside. The neighbors began to avoid even looking at it. Some suggested tearing it down. Others said no one would ever want to live there again. It became a silent reminder, a shadow cast across the entire community. One night, as Claire prepared for bed, she looked out her window and saw Adam standing at his own. His gaze was fixed on Ethan's house. She walked over and touched his shoulder. "What are you looking at?" she asked gently. Adam's voice was low. "I keep thinking about that night, when I saw him standing there, staring. I knew something was wrong. But no one believed me." Claire pulled him into a hug. "You were right to trust your instincts, and because you did, Lily was saved." But Adam shook his head. "What if there are others we didn't save?" His question hung, heavy in the air, and Claire had no answer. She only held him closer, wishing she could take away the fear. The days turned into weeks, but the fear did not fade. Whenever the mail truck stopped at Ethan's old house, neighbors stared until it drove away. Whenever a stranger walked down the street, whispers followed. Trust was broken, and no one knew how to rebuild it. Claire did her best to create normal moments for Adam. They cooked dinner together, watched movies, and visited Lucas and Lily, who were slowly healing. But even in those quiet moments, the shadow of Ethan lingered. His absence was almost as heavy as his presence had been. One evening, Claire found herself staring at the notebook she had kept, the one filled with times, lights, and strange behaviors she had written down. She flipped through the pages, her hand trembling. Each note was a reminder of how close they had been to danger and how blind everyone else had been. She thought of Mrs. Harper, who still cried for her missing dog. She thought of the other families whose belongings were found in Ethan's basement but had no answers about their loved ones. She thought of the smile Ethan wore, the mask he had perfected, and how easily he had fooled them all. That night, she whispered to herself, "Never again. I'll never ignore the signs again." But even as she spoke, a chill crept down her spine. Because deep inside, she knew Ethan's story wasn't finished. He was behind bars now. But the memory of him, the possibility of others like him, the fear he left behind, it would never truly go away. Weeks turned into months, but the shadow of Ethan Brooks still hung over the street. The house across from Claire and Adam remained empty, wrapped in yellow police tape. The once bright lawn grew wild, weeds creeping across the fence, windows covered in dust. Neighbors walked past quickly, avoiding even a glance. It was no longer just a house. It was a scar, a reminder of everything they had ignored. Claire tried to rebuild a sense of normal life for Adam. She took him to school, cooked his favorite meals, and encouraged him to spend time with friends. But she could see the change in him. He was quieter now, always looking over his shoulder, and he often woke from nightmares. Sometimes he would whisper, "He was right there, Mom, right across the street." Claire would hug him and say, "It's over now. He can't hurt us anymore." But she wondered if she was saying it for him or for herself. The rest of the neighborhood struggled too. Families who once shared dinners together now kept to themselves. The children no longer rode bikes up and down the street. Even summer gatherings stopped. Everyone lived with an unspoken fear that evil had been so close, and they had not seen it. Lucas and Lily were slowly healing. Lily rarely spoke about what had happened, but when she did, her words were soft and broken. She said she remembered the cold basement, the darkness, and the way Ethan smiled as if nothing was wrong. Lucas stayed close to her at all times, unwilling to let her out of his sight. He often thanked Claire and Adam, saying, "You saved her. I'll never forget that." Claire always shook her head, replying, "We just did what anyone would do." But she knew not everyone had done it. Many had looked away. One autumn evening, Claire sat on her porch, watching the leaves fall. Adam sat beside her, his eyes on the empty house. "Do you think people will ever trust each other again?" he asked. Claire thought for a long moment. "Maybe not in the same way," she answered. "But trust isn't about pretending nothing. Bad can happen. It's about facing the truth and choosing to believe again." Adam nodded but said nothing more. A few days later, news came that Ethan had confessed to several crimes. The police announced they had linked him to other missing people from nearby towns. Some families finally had answers, though the truth was painful. Others were left with more questions, realizing their loved ones might never be found. The news spread quickly, and reporters returned to the neighborhood asking more questions, filming more footage. The story of the perfect neighbor became known far beyond their quiet street. Claire refused interviews. She wanted peace, not attention. But she couldn't stop thinking about how easily Ethan had fooled them all. She replayed every moment, the muffins on her doorstep, the help with her car, the kind words. Every gesture had been part of a mask, and she wondered how many other masks were out there, worn by people who seemed just as harmless. Adam struggled with the same thoughts. One night, he asked her, "How can we ever know who to trust? What if there's someone else like him?" Claire pulled him close. "We can't live in fear of everyone, Adam, but we can learn to listen to our instincts. You saw the truth before anyone else. Next time, we won't ignore it." The seasons changed, but the street never returned to the way it was. The sound of children playing was gone. Neighbors waved less often. The house where Ethan lived stood as a silent warning, untouched and unwanted. Some said it should be torn down. Others said it should remain, so no one would ever forget. Claire sometimes dreamed of moving away, starting fresh somewhere else. But she also felt tied to the place, as if leaving would mean running from the truth. She wanted Adam to grow strong, not frightened. She wanted him to see that even in darkness, people could survive, could rebuild. One evening, as she tucked Adam into bed, he whispered, "I still see him in my dreams, standing there smiling." Claire brushed his hair gently. "Dreams can't hurt you," she said softly. But when she turned off the light and left the room, she admitted to herself that she saw him too. In her own dreams, Ethan stood in his yard, watching, smiling, his mask still in place. Months later, the police finally removed the tape from his house. It went up for sale, but no one wanted it. Families who came to look always left quickly, shaking their heads. They said the house felt wrong, as if it carried the weight of everything Ethan had done. For Claire, the empty house became part of her daily life. Each morning she opened her curtains and saw it standing there, quiet and dark. Each night she closed her curtains quickly, not wanting to see it. The story of Ethan Brooks became a warning whispered in the community. Parents told their children to be careful, to never trust someone just because they seemed kind. Teachers reminded students to speak up if something felt wrong. And neighbors, once blind to small signs, now watched too closely, always looking for shadows in the light. In time, life moved on. People healed, though scars remained. Claire continued working at the clinic. Adam grew older and stronger, and Lucas and Lily found moments of peace again. But the story of the perfect neighbor never left them. It became part of their lives, shaping how they saw the world. On a quiet night, years later, Claire stood at her window and looked across the street at the dark, empty house. She thought about the man who once smiled and waved, who once seemed like a friend. She thought about how easily kindness can hide cruelty. And she whispered to herself, "We will never be fooled again." The street was silent, the houses still, but in the shadows of memory, Ethan's smile lingered. A reminder that darkness can live behind the brightest smiles, and that sometimes the most ordinary face can hide the darkest crime. You've just seen another chilling story from the world of true crime, but there are many more secrets waiting to be uncovered. Subscribe to Crime Loom, and join us as we unravel more heists, mysteries, and untold legends. Don't miss what's coming next, because in the world of crime, the truth is always stranger than fiction.